This is Uncommonly Remarkable, where we discuss the surprising everyday lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. My name is Artis Beatty. I am a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for My Eye Doctor OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and the conversations held here are separate from my work with My Eye Doctor. Today's guest describes himself as an independent analytical explorer who is both intentional and somewhat talkative. As the owner and founder of Marshall Video, a video production agency based in Raleigh, North Carolina, Erik and his team strategize and produce video content for enterprise and mid-market companies, as well as highlight the sometimes overlooked but very real aspects of human life in documentaries and through journalism. In this episode, learn how Erik's approach to video production is poised to reshape the industry, how a love for nonfictional storytelling has led to real change, the realization of wrongs, and the pursuit and capture of criminals. Hear why video can be unusually expensive, tips on communication, and much, much more. Ladies, gentlemen, all you remarkable people, please help me welcome Erik Woodard to the show. Erik, welcome to the show. It is fantastic to have you. Thank you for taking some time out to sit down and talk with us.
Of course.
You know, we worked on scheduling this for a while because I've been busy. You've been busy. You've been traveling and doing some amazing things. And we're going to talk about some of those things here in just a little bit. And so it's always wonderful when we can get things to sync up and we can start to talk. I'm also a little bit intimidated to have you here because of all of the guests, you're the one that knows all the things about recording and how it's supposed to work and what we're supposed to do and what we're not going to do. And so here I am, the amateur
Artist,
guy.
I'm silently judging you right now.
I can tell. I can tell.
I'm joking.
But I do really appreciate you being here. And I'm really excited for us to talk about things because you've got a lot of stuff. And, full disclosure for everybody who's listened to the episodes, they're generally free-flowing conversations. I don't ask a lot of questions of you before we get here, but I do a little research and write some things down. And so I've got my little flip sheet here that I've got some stuff on. So we'll refer to it here as we go through.
Cool. Sounds good.
So I guess the first thing we'll do is talk about Marshall Video a little bit because I always like for people to explain what they do and what they are involved in from a company perspective, because it better informs us about all the things that in your personal life maybe have led you to that. So talk about Marshall Video a little bit.
So I started Marshall Video in 2010. I'm a producer. That's kind of where I sit. But I can do plenty of other things, camera operation, sound operation, editing, you name it. So I've worked as an editor, camera operator. I've directed pieces, and I'm at a point now in my career where I produce. So frequently I'm the person who's helming the crew, making a lot of the selections. I'm also helping clients steer their project in the right way. And so frequently when people come to me, clients of various sorts, it's usually, hey, I've got this documentary that I want to create. I have this, because I also do, this photojournalism pieces, investigative journalism pieces. How can we develop this into a story that we can release, and then they're going to shop the story out to a major publication. Or we have corporate clients. Fine. What are your objectives? And then I try to help them to reach those goals. And usually the problem comes down to they know what they would like the results to be. They know where they're at, but communicating through visual media, just not what they know, right? It's very foreign. It has a lot of technical humps, a lot of creative humps, and it's just very difficult to wrap your mind around. So normally when I'm engaged on anything like this, I'm trying to take a step back and figure out what am I trying to do for them.
I see.
And that's I would say that's a key differentiator with Marshall Video compared to a lot of individuals, but also a lot of companies in this industry. And I actually take that as a very serious thing, but also as kind of like a proofs in the pudding, is that the role of a communicator is not to push or say what they want. It's to be subservient to someone else and help them to communicate what they want most effectively to the audience of their choosing. And that's unfortunately missing in my industry frequently. So I think that's, if I was to say I think that's from an essential component, I think that's an essential property of me, but also Marshall.
When you're thinking about being involved with clients, I mean, I would imagine that on the one hand, allowing the client to be able to communicate to you what they want is very important. But on the other hand, most people aren't necessarily sure about what actually plays well for, say, video, or plays well with being able to create the strategy they're trying. They don't create the strategy well around what they're trying to communicate. How do you deal with that and still allow for them to have a lot of say in what's going on?
Well, normally I get it outside of the communication space.
I see. Okay.
Because communication, right? Like if you think about the individual human body and how does communication work? Communication starts in the mind, not in the mouth. Mm-hmm. And I'm supposed to be a mouthpiece for them. So if I'm going to understand how best to communicate and even help them to understand how that communication effort will be received by an audience,
I see. Yeah.
I have to step all the way back to what are your ideas? What are your intentions? And frequently that gets into a conversation, just to give you some practical sense of what this means. Frequently, if I'm talking with usually corporations, but even mid-market companies, this is kind of the thing is I step in and I say, okay, what is the business goal you're trying to achieve? Because that's where it starts. And that is where it gets difficult because frequently clients are so focused on, but no, it's about the video. And I'm like, no. The video is just a means to whatever end is there. It's a tool. I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to accomplish. Then I can give you best direction.
I see.
And so when I step back, for Invisalign, the retainer company, right? Fantastic. Love them. They were an amazing client for us to work with. We helped to create 3 years worth of their HR outreach globally. So 14 to 16 different cities filmed in, produced over 40 pieces of content, and created a 3 years worth of outreach and recruitment strategy. Now, sure, that's a great end result, but how did we get there? I had to step back with some of their global HR people. This wasn't marketing. This wasn't sales, where you normally think someone like me exists.
Yeah.
This was HR. But HR is a major component of a business. If you're trying to grow a business and you don't have the talent, good luck, right?
Right.
And so part of it is me saying, wait a minute. Yeah, Align has these really cool brand videos. They're all about their product. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm trying to help them with a specific business need or pain point, whatever. I need to understand that properly. Otherwise, how am I going to strategize good video, good content, a good overarching strategy? And through that, we were able to identify some opportunities and say, hey, I think if we do this project, larger vision this way, you will get way more out of it. And then I can build this 3 years worth of content. When they saw that I was interested in their business needs, because HR, I mean, if anyone's listening to this, I'm not trying to point anyone out, but HR frequently gets dumped on.
Yeah.
And there's a huge need.
Say that's true. Yeah.
And there's a lot of times that the marketing people kind of can get dumped on too, because they'll be like, oh, we need all these people. We need a huge outreach. And they're like, well, I don't have any budget. And HR is like, well, I don't have any budget, right? Like this is such a common, I cannot tell you how many times I have clients where it's just a budgetary issue or whatever else. But just by stepping back and maybe helping them with understanding some of the business component that also builds trust, So they understand I'm there for them, not for me. And then working it through there, that solves probably at least, I'd say over 50, maybe 75% of the problems and mitigates most of the failures.
Then the next question for me would be around how did you get there, right? So
in my career or just with the client, or
in your career and the way you're thinking about things, because it's not necessarily the way it's normally or I shouldn't say normally. I would not think it's the way it is generally approached with people in your segment, right? And so it sounds like you are looking at it differently in order to deliver an outcome that may be differentiated, better than what comes from other folks. So how did you get to start thinking about it in those terms? Yeah.
I would say that really happened in my late 20s.
Okay.
So basically I was working with another production company and I was seeing kind of the fruits of that way of doing business, which is kind of the normative for my industry. It's usually pretty immoral, unethical, casting couch is a term in video production and film for a reason, right? It can be an unsavory industry at times. Not everyone, but there are a lot of bad players. Mm-hmm. And I started to realize that the person I was working with was one of those bad players. Found out that this production company, the owners had stolen a large amount of money from, another team on a project. I was realizing, they're not paying me for some of the stuff I'm doing. This is a problem. Found out they weren't paying some other people. I started to see like a lot of problems. And I started to see like, wow, there's this, because there are so many people who enter this industry, film, video, production, media, entertainment at large, because of their own kind of self-centered vainglory is the way I put it. It's all about you and how you want to be the next great fill in the blank. And so inherently, your view of communication is I will accept your money to accomplish my career goals.
Okay.
Not. Yeah. And so fundamentally, what I started to discover is a lot of media companies and production companies have literally designed their businesses, their models, their service offerings in that mindset. And I looked at that and said, that seems wrong. And I started to think, and I remember bringing this to the guys I was working with at the time. I was like, hey, here's what I would like to do. I love small businesses. I've got family that started small businesses. I come from, a lot of the people in my family worked in construction. They own their own trucks. They own their own equipment and they're working hard. So I have this, almost like Bruce Springsteen type attitude. I love the everyday working man who's working in the trades and doing all these honest work, right? And that's how I was brought up by my family because I grew up on a farm, grew up around construction. Like that's the mindset I was given. And so I really loved it. And I was like, why is it that video is so unaffordable? And I started looking at it from that standpoint of, why aren't we not constraining more expenses? Why are we not intentionally really putting effort into rethinking the entire approach and business model in video production and media and entertainment so that it's more accessible and affordable? Oh, because it's all about us. Wait a minute. This is an industry-wide problem I'm seeing. Wow. Because I've worked with multiple production companies. I've worked with people from LA, New York, overseas. When I say that this is a systemic problem, I'm saying it's a systemic problem. The circle of trust is very low. People are very cutthroat. People won't pay. They'll threaten not to pay. I've had it all, right, in my industry. Whenever I dealt with clients who were business owners, though, they understood you can't play that way. if you're a business owner and you start being cutthroat, you don't pay people, you get lawsuits.
Yeah.
You ruin your reputation and no one wants to do business with you. And I was like, why does my industry act so unethical and frankly, like self-centered? We're here to communicate.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it came from. And then it just blossomed from there because I was big into documentaries and big into journalism.
But that also points to some of the reason you've been able to do some of the things that you've been able to do, which I think a lot of them are really, really cool. And so hopefully we'll get to talk about some of them because
that is the other side of it. I'm drawn towards things that are real and true, like documentaries and journalism.
And the documentaries part, I think, is what has me so curious because you've done a number of them, but some of them have been some pretty heavy hitting documentaries about subject matter that is really, important for a lot of us, right? Like you've done, you've done a documentary on orphans as an example.
Yep.
Tell me about that one because I don't think we've talked about that one in any detail at all.
So this was a really great early opportunity that a friend of mine in one of my instructors in college gave me.
Okay.
So he would go around through different parts of the world, frequently in places that are kind of dangerous. But in those spaces, you frequently have a lot of orphans. And one of them was in Burma, Myanmar, where he was trying to show to more of an audience here in the States, hey, there's a lot of children that are being put inside of these orphanages. How can we get these kids adopted? Because there's no better solution, right? Having a child who has no parents, right? No one there to help socialize them and bring them into adulthood and part of their community, right? Like, which is a big component of parenting.
Right.
And so that was kind of the core. And I thought it was really cool. And I was like, oh yeah. Because, at the time I was trying to help with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of ministries, you name it. Because I was like, hey, this is a good opportunity for me to work. It's a neat subject to work on. But I'd never worked on a project quite like that. And I think that really also hearing this professor's own story. So he was a man who, him and his wife, had decided very early on in their marriage that they wanted to adopt children and adopt a lot. And so every few years, they would try to go overseas and adopt a child. And they frequently adopt children from really difficult and terrible situations. And they knew that it was going to be a big cost to them. And also it was going to be tough for them to work through at times because some of these children saw their parents murdered, right? Like this is not easy. And that, it gave me a vision of how I could use communication to give voice to people who don't, to affect real change in the world. And that's where I was like, wow, documentaries and journalism are far superior and greater than the best fictional film you'll ever watch. Because at the end of a fictional film, who's really helped? Versus at the end of a documentary or journalistic piece that's, really is able to get out there. It's like, wow, you can really affect change.
Yeah, the potential is definitely different.
Yep.
Do you follow what happens after the documentary and understand what effect that it did have?
Yes. So for some I do. Back when I was younger, because this was before I really, that happened in college, and it would be probably another 5 to 10 years before I would really see that stark disconnect and then start blazing my own path around. I want to only do nonfiction work. Mm-hmm. I don't care about fiction work. I honestly don't like it. I'm like, give me something that's real, that affects people. And this is part of the reason why I just love working with businesses at times as well. It's like, I can work on something that can help customers or help businesses or help with partnerships. It's like, so yeah, that's Yeah, I think you see what was going on at the time and how it worked out in me.
Well, but that's, I mean, I didn't know the sequence, right?
Okay.
But thinking about that as kind of a starting point,
Mm-hmm.
you've done work on human trafficking. You've done work around the opioid crisis.
Yep.
You've done work in West Africa. There's been this huge number of things that you've been working on that all seem to have a lot of that same big effect on, or potentially that same big effect on bringing awareness to an issue, a problem, a circumstance, and then maybe affecting its outcome.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me about the work you did around human trafficking, because that was a big deal, and it was like multiple continents, right?
That is, so I will simplify it.
Okay.
And then you'll see just how big it is. So in the US, I'm going to preface all this with allegedly, even though some things have actually went through court now and been proven. But just in case, I'm going to say allegedly. So what we found, what all the evidence seems to point to, is that there are a few US, Australian, UK, and European quote unquote ministries that what they do is they collect money from usually wealthier nations that are, in those areas. And they say that we're going to help orphans and widows in these really terrible places. I mean, like some of the worst places in the world where there's the worst human rights abuses, terrible stuff, right?
Okay.
That's where they say they're get this money and how beneficial they're going to be. And when I say they raise hundreds of millions, I mean they raise a lot of money globally. What we found out was that they strategically set things up so that when that money goes over there, one, it seems like they don't do double entry accounting, which if you know anything about accounting, you know that that's usually a sign that someone's hiding money. They also have, and this is where it's like doubly terrible, is at times they'll hire locals and then direct those locals to do certain things a certain way. Like, hey, make sure that you keep some of this money for yourself because, I know you're working really hard. And then later, if that staff member ever comes forward and says, wait a minute, I'm seeing children being trafficked, this seems wrong, they'll say, oh, do you remember when you stole a few weeks ago? What do you mean stole? You remember when you took that money? And we've found multiple cases of them doing this. And then it goes all the way down to the actual orphanages that they have put money into, where you'd have hundreds of children being put into large rooms. And then the directors of these orphanages would have keys to those rooms and would sleep in those dormitories with the children and would not have clothes on and have the children on their laps. And come to find out, we're doing horrible things to these children. And then multiple people would find out about it and they'd come to these organizations, these US and UK and other quote unquote ministries who say they're doing this out of their love for God and all this other stuff, and say, wait a minute, this money's being used by these terrible people. You're handing money to the directors of these orphanages and these local ministries, and here's what they're doing with it. And then their reply is, oh, I had a vision from God. You're a terrible person. You're a liar. I'm firing you. I'm not joking. So like this, so if you can imagine this, this is happening in multiple countries throughout the world. The president of the US branch of this organization back in, I think, the 90s or 2000s was accused of inappropriate relationships with a young girl in his church. He unalived himself. The police chief of that area was also on the same board with him. And guess what never happened? An investigation. This was covered when it happened. So I look at this and think, this has been going on for decades. And when they get caught, they cover up. And so when we first created this kind of very incendiary opening salvo, right? Like this was our first shot across the bow of, hey, here's what we found, where we have tons of witnesses, tons of documentation, tons of records, emails, you name it. I mean, we even went to their own Facebook pages and said, look, this proves you even said you were there, even though now you're saying you're not, right? Like we had all this documentation. And then once we release it, we first release it to their board. And we tried to release it to the boards of all of the sister, brother organizations, because this is a global ministry, air quotes.
Yeah.
And so we tried to release it to everyone and said, look, we're bringing this to you first so that way you can hopefully have a good external blue ribbon third-party investigation. Their reply is, oh, we'll do that. And then nothing. But they do start releasing marketing pieces to basically try to almost position themselves in such a way where look at all this great work we're doing in these countries. Look at the amazing work we're doing. And they're really pushing and pushing and pushing. And we keep, and this is months, we're going back and saying like, what are you doing? What are you doing about this? Why isn't anything stopping? And during this whole time, these things are still happening to these children.
So I think for me, the question is,
sorry, that became big quick. So
well,
sorry.
But no, because I mean, I think it was an innocent question, right? Like, tell me about it. Yeah. But now there's so many more questions to go with.
I get very passionate about this. So.
And I can't imagine that you wouldn't. So when you're saying we had this evidence, we did this, so where's the difference in this particular scenario from journalism versus documentary, right? Because when I think about journalism, I think about the research, the putting together the facts, the big board with all the stuff on it, and you're mapping it out. You've got sources, things are verifiable. We know them to be true because of that, right? And then I think about from a documentary perspective, following the story. Generally, I don't think about that during the unfold. It's generally something that comes after the story is there. How are you involved, and what parts of this have you been involved in?
So I was working with, there's a ministry in North Carolina, and there's another one in, I believe, Oklahoma. And then there's a private business, a prosthetic and orthotics company. And these three groups were together, and they were the ones who first started finding out about this stuff. And they were there trying to do kind of a medical ministry where they were trying to help bring prosthetics to very poor people.
I see.
And that's when they found out, oh, there's kind of a con going on over here. And multiple people in West Africa,
I see,
started to come.
So those are actually connected. Yep. The work that you were involved in, and okay.
Yep. And so, to give to anyone who's listening who has not been to that part of Africa or a lot of parts of Africa, there's a weird thing there, and this is going to sound nuts, but when they see a white person, it's like seeing a king, and they elevate that person. I've had Africans come down and bow to me, and I'm like, this is awkward. Please don't do this. And I've had to tell them, like, no. I'll stand at your level. I'll squat down to you, or you come to me. No, this is not how this works. So there's a real issue there, right? And so part of the problem is that they have seen these white men come over with tons of money before. and say that they're going to do all these wonderful things in the name of God for them. And so a lot of them believed them at those words. And then some of these, different men and women started to see, wait a minute, what you're saying you're here for, and then what we're seeing is happening to these children, this doesn't line up. And then they tried to bring it to these global ministries, the people they knew. One of them is a man named Peter Jasek. He works with Voice of the Martyrs US, I'm pretty sure, and he's floated around to a few different organizations. But usually he's floated around to Voice of the Martyrs as a company or as a group of nonprofit ministries. And so they hear about this great American ministry, Voice of the Martyrs, and they say, oh, you're here to help us. Okay, thank you so much. We need this. And then some of these people who are boots on the ground working in those areas around those orphanages start to see terrible things and hear terrible things. And children are coming forward with missing eyes, broken bodies, really bad things. And these men and women say, this is really bad. They tried to go to people like Peter Jasek. They tried to reach whoever they could, thinking maybe y'all just don't know, right? And I think that's a fair place to start, right?
Yeah.
But then when you start to see how they respond for months or even years, and how they just fire the people who were trying to be whistleblowers. One of the men who they fired was an amazing man. His name is Zingak. Zingak would literally, when he would hear about a terrorist attack in a part of his country, he would hop in his vehicle and drive towards it because he thought there might be people there who need help. Very courageous of him, very honorable of him. I think the world of him. He's a pretty amazing man. He was one of the men who came forward and said, hey, this is the stuff that I'm seeing and hearing, and other people are saying this is not good. And I believe that he is a Christian man. He is a professing Christian. I believe it based off the way he acts. But he came forward and said, this is not the way that Christianity is supposed to be acting. We should be helping these people, not allowing this type of stuff to happen to children. And they fired him. And it was Peter Jasek, one of the big wigs at VOM, who had a vision and fired him. And so when you start to see, like anytime you see something like this happening, you're like, oh yeah, there's some serious red flags. And so once we started to investigate it more, we started to get, we recorded some of the family members, some of the girls and boys, their testimony of what happened, how frequently it happened. We went through the process of editing it. One of the hardest thing to do is work on that project and listen to these things. And it's like, look, I'm sorry. Is this like, are we going to just call this like a mass delusion? No. And then we started being able to get copies of certain financial things or certain emails or certain other texts and everything. It's like, oh, this is fitting together. And then eventually, so it was really kind of a organic component where over time, as certain things came to light, we would document and then hold on to it, because sometimes when you're exploring, you don't know what you found really means. You don't understand what part it has to play. And so truly you're just exploring and documenting. But as more things come to light, you start to see those connections. And then you start to be able to corroborate each data point and corroborate the connections. And I'd say the biggest confirmation was when we sent over our findings. And then we talked with the founder of VOM's son.
Where did you send over your findings?
So we sent it to the board of Voice of the Martyrs.
Voice of the Martyrs, okay.
We sent a copy to them. We sent a copy to a few other boards. About the same time, maybe a little bit earlier, we had gotten in touch with the founders of Voice of the Martyrs, their son, who was at one time also a board member. And then we had conversations with him. And that's pretty much when I was like, oh yeah, this is 100% confirmed for me personally now. Because what he said was, oh yeah, this has been happening for a long time. And then he brings up to light to us, oh yeah, look it up. One of the previous presidents of VOM unalived himself after these allegations were finally published in an article. And then the police chief, oh yeah, he was on the same board with that president. And the police chief elected, let's not investigate. And we were like, oh. And then he started talking about other countries and other continents.
Yeah.
And then he started telling me about other cities that he was fairly certain about.
So now, as this is kind of ongoing, where is it being investigated, or how is it moving forward? Right? Like,
yeah.
Were you able to connect authorities that believe the evidence and they're now working towards dismantling, or at least understanding? Like, where are you?
So basically where it's at, so I've worked on more so the side of the production component. Some of these ministries are actually the tip of the spear. And it's honestly been the most encouraging thing for me, is to see, these men and women from these, what I'd say, more legitimate ministries and businesses saying, I don't care if it costs me a lot of money. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to hundreds of children per orphanage being used. Yes. So that's how it's worked, is because this is such a huge, sprawling thing, right? Just to give you an understanding of, like another component of the game or con that they run, it seems to me, is they will take pictures with poor West African children whose legs were burnt off in terrorist attacks by Boko Haram, which is, if you know anything about terrorism, Boko Haram is major in Africa. They're the dominant, and they're way more deadly than ISIS, Al-Qaeda. Like, they're bad. So they take pictures with this kid named Wang. They say, help us, donate. We're going to help make sure that he gets prosthetic legs and he gets an education and he has shoes. Donate to this ministry so that way we can be a blessing to this young boy. And guess what they never do? They never get his prosthetics. They never take care of his education. And if you know anything about prosthetics, it's incredibly urgent. You have to get a prosthetic fitted normally within the first year. Otherwise, you start having so much atrophy around that joint or that place where it won't fit and you won't be able to have a prosthetic. Even more so with children, because children are also growing.
Yeah.
And so here's this poor child who lost his legs in a terrorist attack and also lost his parents. And they're taking pictures with him. And you can see they have a picture. The same guy, Peter Jasek, who's over there, has a picture with Wang on his lap. They're literally profiting off of the extreme terrible things that have happened to this child. And then they're promising they're going to do all this wonderful work. And they never do.
Never do.
And this is the thing that we have seen repeatedly. Like when we started to work on these projects and started to expose these things, they would promise to us, oh yeah, we'll take this seriously. We'll take this seriously. We'll take this seriously. But then they'd release a public marketing statement saying, we don't know anything. Well, this is the first we've heard about it. Oh, really? I have emails that show that you've known about it for at least a few months. We sent you a DVD copy of all this. So it was like by certified mail. We have signatures. You've known about this for at least 9 months. Who are you kidding? But they're playing the game of, why do we care? We can just market that we're doing these amazing things, take pictures with a poor child who's lost his legs and his family, and rake in tons of money.
And the machine
Who cares?
continues.
Exactly.
Wow.
So that's what we found. And we found it repeatedly. Every single time we traced down a story, this was the same con. And we found at least 3 or 4 types of cons that they play, and it's like rinse repeat, baby. And they make so much money per year on each con in every country.
Now having this experience and being involved with bringing some of this to light, Do you have any level of confidence that there is a resolution, a semi-resolution, like something coming from the work that you've done?
Yes. So we've been able to help expose one of the local cons or schemes that they had. And that was with a man named Isaac, who was in charge of the Stevens Center in, I believe it was Abuja, Nigeria.
Okay.
He's dead. When I heard, I went out and celebrated and drank. I was like, thank God that that man is dead.
Wow.
Because he was facing serious charges. While this was all happening, what was very interesting, anyone who's traveled through that part of Africa knows bribery and corruption is the norm. I mean, literally the norm. When I've been traveling through parts of West Africa, pretty much every day someone tries to shake me down for a bribe because I'm white and I stick out and they know I might have money. And I'm talking about officials. I've had this happen at the airport, the national airport. And there's a colonel with a firearm looking at me saying, "Oh, I was going to go get some coffee. You want some?" "No, I'm fine." "You should give me some money so I can go get us coffee." "Nope." "Do you have any cash on you?" "I don't have any cash with me." "Well, I'm sorry, you can't get on the flight. I mean, 50? Do you have 50 on you?" He's shaking me. He's literally going to keep me from boarding my flight to get out of the country. And that's the norm. And I'm saying, like, so if you think about it, that's the culture you're working in. So it makes it really easy for you to predate these people, especially if you're someone from the West with tons of money coming in there, especially if you're a white man. Wow. And so that's kind of what goes on. And so as you start to understand how the system works, it makes it easier for you to spot where you should go to investigate more. And so that's what we've really gotten attuned to is, we see how this works. It makes it a lot harder for them to cover up. And so what we eventually did was, I think, a really good resolution, at least for what we were doing in parts of Nigeria and Benin and a few other places over there, was we said, all right, fine, gloves are off. Let's go to advertising. And so we advertised social media clips of some of these children describing what happened to them.
Oh.
And we spread it over the entirety of that part of the continent. And at the same time, we wanted to do it with orchestrated protests where people started protesting in the streets. And once the word got out, there were judges that we found out were taking bribes. There were some police officers that were bribed to go and almost beat to death one of the witnesses. We had to help, like one of the organizations helped to hide that witness so that he wouldn't be murdered before the court date, right? Like this is the level things go to there, right? The last time I was in Nigeria, I was literally there while some of the police officers were shooting into crowds of 14-year-old girls who were protesting over assault.
Wow.
Right. So like I was hearing the gunshots and watching this stuff happening. So if you look up like the SARS episode or the SARS corruption, right? The SARS were basically the federal police, and it was found shockingly that the federal police in Nigeria were basically turning their stations into brothels where they would take women against their will, get them hooked on drugs, and then literally pimp them out of this station. And they had kept one girl for over 2 years doing this to her before she was freed. So I'm there while these protests were happening. Things are popping off. Literally, we had a few days where we were just hunkered down in the hotel because they declared martial law because it was getting so unhinged in every single state. So that's the level of corruption that's there. So when we start advertising all these bad things that have been happening, what ended up happening that was great out of this is they had major inspectors, basically like FBI directors in our country, but inspectors in their country who were found to be taking bribes and hiding this stuff, or even were partaking in part of the trafficking. They got outed, gone out of office. Judges were outed for taking bribes. Some of those were taken out of their position, right? One of the big ringleaders, Isaac, he was able to, we're fairly certain, abscond with probably over $30 million US, which is a lot in Nigeria. But he was able to get it into accounts in the UK. The problem is he didn't trust anyone. So no one else knows how to get to all that money. And so he's back in Nigeria facing all these charges. He's trying to bribe his way out of it. But then you have all this expose. And I mean, when I'm running ads, I mean, it's on social media. I'm running it everywhere I can put an ad. And it's like, sorry, bud, the jig's up. Like, you're exposed now.
Yeah.
And so basically he supposedly had a stroke, and so wasn't able to make it to his trial. So yeah, that's part of the resolution, is that we've taken out maybe some of the lieutenants or maybe some captains in it, but we haven't really taken out some of the U.S. side of it, which knows about it, funds it, markets off of it, uses poor children like Wing to profit. Right. So we haven't gotten that yet, but that is kind of the direction we hope to eventually take. And I can, if you want, I can leave you with a nice happy note.
All about
quickly.
it.
Okay.
All about it.
So one of the neat things, one of the coolest things that I've had the experience of having is, so two young people who came out of these terrible circumstances in West Africa met, got married, and they had their first baby girl.
Oh.
And I got to hold this baby girl, and I got to watch their wedding. And it's like, wow. You know, sometimes it's so easy to think about, you know, children that come from those circumstances, or people who come from difficult circumstances, it's set in stone. It's like, no, this is actually like beauty from ashes.
Yeah.
The destruction that was in their life, and now this wonderful beauty. And it's like, I'm holding this cute, slightly chubby little girl, and she's just happy. And it's like, wow, this little girl would not be here, and these young people wouldn't have met. And it's like, it's not just that you're fighting bad things, is that you're actually creating a more beautiful world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you get to then enjoy the beauty of that world. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly rewarding.
That is absolutely incredible. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hopefully this is one of those where it's hard to leave it, because everyone wants a resolution. So we're going to have to follow up and find out more about how this is going and where it's going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Until next time then.
Thank you, artist.
Thank you, Erik.
And so we end another episode. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. I certainly appreciate all your support. So if you enjoyed the content, please like, subscribe, and share the podcast with your friends. The more you share, the more opportunities we will have to bring you great guests and their remarkable stories. And if you want to know more about the guests, get background information on previous episodes, or just learn a bit more about me and the show, visit us at uncommonlyremarkable.com. Feel free to leave me a comment or a suggestion, and if you want to be featured on the show, click the Contact Us button. Until next time, stay remarkable.